that the universe is pulled toward a complex attractor that exists ahead of us in time, and that our ever-accelerating speed through the phenomenal world of connectivity and novelty is based on the fact that we are now very, very close to the attractor.
Now, it's difficult to imagine a society more different from the society of ancient Egypt than our society today. We hate visionary states in this society. In our society, if we want to insult somebody, we call them a dreamer. In ancient societies, that was praise. And we have erected huge apparatuses of armed bureaucracies who will invade our privacy, who will break down our doors, who will arrest us, who will send us to prison, sometimes for years, for possessing even small quantities of psilocybin or substances like DMT. And it's not as though our society is opposed in principle to altered states of consciousness. I mean, billions are being made by the unholy alliance of psychiatrists and big pharma in overprescribing drugs to control so-called syndromes like depression or attention deficit disorder in teenagers. And we have a love affair in our society with alcohol. We glorify this most boring of drugs. And of course we love our stimulants, our tea, our coffee, our energy drinks, our sugar, and huge industries are built around these substances, which are valued because of the way they alter consciousness. But what all these approved altered states of consciousness have in common is that none of them contradict or conflict with the basic state of consciousness valued by our society, which I would call the alert, problem-solving state of consciousness. But I think everybody realizes that the promise of a society over-monopolistically based upon this state of consciousness has proved hollow. And that this model is no longer working. That it's broken in every possible sense that a model can be broken. And urgently we need to find something to replace it. The vast problems of global pollution that have resulted from the single-minded pursuit of profit. The horrors of nuclear proliferation. The specter of hunger, that millions every night go to bed starving, that we can't even solve this problem despite our alert, problem-solving state of consciousness. And look what's happening in the Amazon, the lungs of our planet, this precious home of biodiversity. The old-growth rainforest being cut down and replaced with soybean farms so we can feed cattle, so that we can all eat hamburgers. Only a truly insane global state of consciousness could allow such an abomination to occur. And I did a back-of-an-envelope calculation during the Iraq War. It seems to me that 6 months' expenditure on the Iraq war would have solved the problem of the Amazon forever. Would be sufficient to compensate the peoples of the Amazon so that no single tree ever needed to be cut down again to garden and look after that amazing resource. But we can't make that decision as a global community. We can spend countless billions on warfare, on hatred, on fear, on suspicion, on division, but we can't get together the collective effort to save the lungs of our planet. When I've asked shamans about the sickness of the West, they say it's quite simple. You guys have severed your connection with spirit. Unless you reconnect with spirit and do so soon, you're going to bring the whole house of cards down around your heads and
Follow
ours.
the strings. Watch them dance.
And I stand here invoking the hard-won right of freedom of speech to call for and demand another right to be recognized, and that is the right of adult sovereignty over consciousness. There's a war on consciousness in our society, and if we as adults are not allowed to make sovereign decisions about what to experience with our own consciousness while doing no harm to others, then we cannot claim to be free in any way, and it's useless for our society to go around the world imposing our form of democracy on others while we nourish this rot at the heart of society.
To divinity.
It may even be that we're denying ourselves the next vital step in our own evolution by allowing this social test to continue.
That's picking up the internet, the pictures can look solid. They can look like a solid world. And in the same way, we are picking up information from this, what I call the cosmic internet. The five senses are turning it from vibrational information into electrical information, which then is decoded by the brain into this world that we think is outside of us, because that's the illusion. Only exists when we decode it. This reality only exists in this physical sense when it's observed. What I would say, when we've decoded it from the information construct into this holographic reality we call the physical world. And this is why quantum physicists look inside the atom, which they say, of course, atoms make up this physical world, but inside the atom is nothing. It's just empty. can something that's not solid make up a solid world? And said it doesn't. It's all an illusion in the decoding process. So someone said to me, what is this universe at its foundation? I would say it's information. What is the wireless internet? It is information. The computer takes that information, turns it into a connected reality. We take that information through the body computer and turns that into this apparent reality. Only instead of being on a screen, the screen is in. When we look out of the window, we might see a blue car go past the house. Someone else will see the same blue car because we're all decoding the same information. What then happens, this is where the uniqueness comes from, we then decide what we think of that car. We then view this decoded reality in different ways, and that's what makes us different.
The understanding of Zen, the understanding of, well, we'll call it mystical. And for a person who cannot contain it, it's like putting 1,000,000 volts through your head. You blow your mind and it stays blown. Now, if you go off in that way, that is what would be called in he's one who goes off into the transcendental world that he's never seen again. He's made a mistake from the standpoint of Buddhism, there is no fundamental difference between the transcendental world and this everyday world. The Bodhisattva, you see, who doesn't go off into a nirvana and stay there forever and ever, but comes back and lives ordinary everyday life to help other beings to see through it too. He has some sort of solemn duty to help mankind and all that kind of fun. He comes back and sees the two worlds are the same. He sees all other beings as Buddha. But now a great thing in the street seems now. We are moving straight into the million masks of God.
There's nothing to fear.
Look at people and see that they really, deep down, they look at you and say, you look at them in a funny way, and here you see the Buddha nature looking out of their eyes straight at you and saying it's not. And saying it quite sincerely.
But the problem about words is that you never listen to them. And that would be a mistake. For all I'm doing is thinking with words. The message that is being sent is nonverbal. Anything you write down in a notebook, take home, think about, forget it.
Beneath the skin.
For in fact, I'm not going to say anything that you don't know already. But the perplexing problem is that you don't know you know. Chung Tzu says, the fish trap exists because of the fish. Once you've gotten the fish, you can forget the trap. The rabbit snare exists because of the rabbit. Once you've gotten the rabbit, you can forget the snare. Words exist because of meaning. Once you've gotten the meaning, you can forget the word. You don't have to try. You don't even have to listen. We just have to be together. And it'll all happen. It'll all happen.
Into this expansive, amazing feeling of self. Bigger than what I do. It was bigger than my body. It was everything and everyone. I was no longer a fragment of the universe. I was the universe. And ever since that day, I've been trying to get back there. It comes and it goes. It's like riding a wave. Come on, come off. But at least I know where I want to go. And I want to take as many people with me as I possibly can, because the feeling is amazing.
Took 3 hard days of labour, sweating, aching, but I had faith. So I kept on pushing those wheelbarrows, but I must admit, when it was all over after 3 days, I thought, wow, we finished it. Tomorrow I can have a rest, I can meditate. The following morning, after breakfast, the monk in charge, the deputy monk, he brought all the monks together and said, I've been thinking, I don't think that's the right place for the earth. Let's move it round the corner. Now that was the test of my faith. But I thought, no, I respect that monk too. I'm a Buddhist, I will let go, I will push those wheelbarrows. For another 3 days of hard work, toiling under the hot conditions of a Thai jungle. After another 3 days, I was really relieved. We moved it and they were happy. That night, the Jangar came back. And yes, guess what happened? He got all the monks together and he said, what did you put it there for? I told you to put it over here. Move it! Another 3 days of pushing wheelbarrows. I didn't become a monk to push wheelbarrows. I didn't put on the yellow robes to be exploited like this. We monks should form a union. We should stand up for our rights. because the senior monks, they didn't push any wheelbarrows, they were just telling us what to do. So I got very upset. I got very angry. In fact, I started swearing in English so the Thais couldn't understand. They did understand, because they see my facial expressions. And one monk came up to me. He gave me a teaching which helped me for so many years. He said, pushing the wheelbarrow is easy. Thinking about it is the hard part. Pushing the wheelbarrow is easy. Thinking about it is the hard part. How true that was. As soon as I stopped complaining, as soon as I stopped thinking about it and just pushed that wheelbarrow was lighter. And there was no suffering anymore. It was the thinking which caused me the suffering. Whatever test you have in life, stop thinking about it so much. Just do it. Now, how much in your life do you think too much? Thinking too much is a great cause of suffering. So many things in life you just have to do, so stop complaining. But you know, that only work for a short time. Because later on, I did complain even more about what it was like to be a young monk in Thailand. I was much thinner as a young monk than I am now. When they say that Buddhism is growing in the West, this is what they mean. But my trouble, the reason why I'm fat, it's not that I eat too much, I don't worry enough. But no, when I was a young monk, I was so thin. And one of the reasons was, whenever we got any food, it was given to the senior monks first. They took their share and they passed it down the line of monks according to seniority. So by the time it came to me, it was only the remains of it, what everyone else didn't want. I thought that was so unfair. Because after all those senior monks, they were probably already enlightened. They didn't need nice food. It was me who needed the nice food. I could appreciate it, they wouldn't even appreciate it. Anything would be good for them. And all the senior monks, they'd have all these big cushions. And the junior monks, we had to sit on the hard concrete. And I thought, I was so thin and bony. I was the one who needed the cushions. Those fat monks, they had their own upholstery. And they made us work so hard. And they never did any work, they just sat around talking to people all day. Ooh, it was so unfair. So I complained. One of the monks said to me, you've got what we call young monk suffering. When you become a senior monk, you'll be fat, you'll have the choice of food, you'll have the biggest cushions, you'll have senior monk suffering. And sometimes I do that, I think, all those young monks, they don't have to give talks all day. They don't have to listen to people talking about their children, their marriage, their finances and everything else. I became a monk to get rid of all that stuff. And that's called old monk suffering. Now the point is, you're not getting rid of suffering, are you? In my monastery, some years ago, 2 Thai girls came to see me. They were sisters. These 2 ladies came to see me. The first one, her problem, she was married, she had a husband, she was having a lot of suffering with her husband. He was giving her a very difficult time. She had husband suffering. Then I asked her sister, what's your problem? And she said, I'm single. I want a husband, I can't find one. But afterwards I told her, Madam, one is married. You've got married woman suffering. You've got single woman suffering. If you get rid of your husband, you won't have married woman suffering anymore. You'll have single woman suffering. And you, if you want a husband, you won't have single woman suffering anymore. You'll have married woman suffering. You don't get rid of the suffering, do you?
There are basically 2 kinds of philosophy. One's called prickles, the other's called goo. And prickly people are precise, rigorous, logical. They like everything chopped up and clear. Goo people like it vague. For example, in physics, prickly people believe that the ultimate constituents of matter are particles. Goo people believe it's waves. And in philosophy, prickly people are logical positivists and goo people are idealists. And they're always arguing with each other. And what they don't realize is that neither one can take his position without the other person. Because you wouldn't know you advocated prickles unless there was somebody else advocating goo. You wouldn't know what a prickle was unless you knew what goo was. Because life is not either prickles or goo, it's gooey prickles and prickly goo. And they go together like back and front, male and female. And that's the answer to philosophy. See, I'm a philosopher. And I'm not going to argue very much, because if you don't argue with me, I don't know what I think. So if we argue, I say thank you, because owing to the courtesy of your taking a different point of view, I understand what I mean, so I can't get rid of you.
From this distant vantage point, the Earth might not seem of any particular interest. But for us, it's different. Consider again that dot. That's here. That's home. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on the mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and triumph they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How eager they are to kill one another. How fervent their hatred is. Our posturings, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe, are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. It underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known.